let's talk about our threads, because the thread and the needle, the marriage between the two, is what makes your machine stitch beautifully. All machines, all thread has a weight to it. Okay, so let's talk about the weight of the thread. The lower the number, the thicker the thread. So I actually have some examples out here. This is a number 3 weight. This is something you would probably do for hand applique, wool work. It's very, very thick. An 8 pearl cotton is something you would use on wool, hand applique, wool work. A 30 weight, actually this is a 12 weight. You could use this in your machine, but obviously you'd have to have a totally different needle, tension. Most of this stuff here is used for hand applique, hand wool work. Let's talk about a 40 weight. I'm a machine embroidery and we always use a 40 weight. It's slightly thicker, 100 is the thinnest, so 40 weight is a little bit thicker because you want your embroidery stitches to show. A 50 weight, that is standard piecing. That's what we piece with, 50 weight cotton. And the cotton and polyester, we'll talk about it in a minute. 60 weight you can use for piecing. This is the percentage they sell here. It's lovely, it's a bit thinner. 80 weight is actually what the pre-wound bobbins are wound in. So it's slightly thinner. And 100 is silk. It's the finest. This is an Invisifil made by Wonderfil, and it's literally like silk or a strand of hair. It's very, very fine. So where needles, the smaller the needle, the finer the needle, the higher the number, the finer the thread. So I always have my students do this little chart, and we always draw the line to what people are doing. So I have some machine embroidery people. They're going to use typically a smaller needle, but an embroidery needle, so it has the bigger eye. Okay. So for piecing, we'll want to use a 50 weight to an 80-12. For a 60 weight piecing, I like a thinner thread. I tend to use a thinner needle for mine. So if you're using something for applique, you want to use a decorative, you're probably going to use a thicker needle because you want the eye to be larger. Obviously, if you're using a 100 weight silk or an Invisifil, you want a very, very small one. So if we draw a line all the way to here, we want to use a thinner needle. So typically, most of my students are doing quilting, piecing, you want an 80-12 universal. If you're doing embroidery, you want to use an embroidery needle, and we talk about that in the embroidery level 1 class. So one thing I want to talk about is the winding of the thread on the spool. These are all cross wounds. As you'll notice that the thread is cross wound. It crosses itself on the spool. Here's the thread that I'm using on this machine. It's cross wound. If I look at this decorative thread, it's our horizontal wound. Old-fashioned spools are like this. And this is really important to know because it'll determine how it goes on the machine. A cross wound will always be horizontal on your machine. It's actually going to come off this way on your machine. And you'll put the little thing in here to stop it from coming. It always has to come horizontal. When you have a horizontal, do not put it this way because it'll constantly catch. A horizontal must be vertical. And in this case, you would need to have a thread stand so that your thread comes off this way, thread stand over here, and it'll come up and thread. Do not put your horizontal thread this way. You'll have really, really poor stitching and it'll constantly snap, snap, snap.